So thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Today, the purpose of this is to really focus on marketing communications and talking about why an effective marketing strategy can really help your business reach its desired goals. This is a continuation of a presentation we did last month at the Missouri Farm Bureau Agritourism Conference. And I think there's at least a couple of you we got to meet last month. So it's good to have you back here today. As a quick introductions, my name is Mallory Rahe. I'm an associate extension professor with the University of Missouri, and I'm so pleased to be joined by Alice Roach, a senior research associate at the University of Missouri, as well as Whitney Schmidt. And all three of us contribute to the Missouri Agriculture, Food, and Forestry Innovation Center, or what we like to call MAFFIC. MAFFIC provides no-cost technical assistance to startup and growing value-added producers. Our services cover a range of business needs. Today, we're going to focus on marketing because we know how critical the marketing function is, particularly for direct-to-consumer businesses like agritourism operations, where you're really relying on your customer to meet you where you are on your farm. Therefore, the way you communicate the value of your business to that customer is really important. And we'll get into that more here today. So when we talk about marketing, it's really a multifaceted discipline. And I want to give you a quick review of the marketing mix, or the 4 Ps. And this is the idea that business success requires providing the right product or offering that meets a targeted audience's need, making it available at an acceptable price, placing that product where it will reach your audience, and then promoting it to that intended audience. All 4 of these components influence the effectiveness of your marketing efforts and the likelihood that you're going to achieve the desired business results. So today we're going to focus on promotion or marketing communications. But remember, you can reach out to MAFFIC for a range of marketing needs or other value-added ag business development services. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alice.
Yeah, thanks, Mallory. Well, as Mallory introduced, the focus of today's presentation is on marketing communications. So we'll share with you some frameworks and tips and tools that you can use to introduce marketing communications to your business, or maybe update or overhaul some existing marketing communications efforts that you already have underway. But I hope that you take this message away from today's presentation, even if you don't take away anything else. And that is that succeeding with marketing communications does take dedicated focus. And this can be difficult when you're a small business owner because you're pulled in different directions. You have so many responsibilities and obligations to the business that marketing communications can get to feeling like just something else that you have to do. And in many cases, it gets put on the back burner. And what I'm suggesting is that even if you can dedicate a few hours a week to marketing communications, or even start with a few minutes a week, doing that consistently will really help your business and will really pay off in the long run. So key point here is to really treat marketing communications as a function that deserves the time and effort that you invest. And it's not something that you do just as you have spare time or extra effort or capacity that you can donate or dedicate to that function in your business. So I mentioned that we do have some frameworks and tips and tools to share with you, but before we get started into sharing our ideas, we want to get a bit of a baseline of how you view marketing communications in a business. And so if you are just now joining us, you can scan the QR code that you see in the bottom left-hand corner here, or open any browser and go to menti.com and enter the 8-digit code. And we'll provide several different questions where we would like to collect your input today. And you can feel free to then leave open that browser, and so you can have ready access to it as we share more questions with you. And in this first question that we would ask is focused on what is the first activity that you should do as a marketer to set your business on the right course. So you had 3 different options available to you. Take a few minutes or moments rather and reflect on what do you feel is the most appropriate first step. Well, I like where you're thinking because I would agree with all of you that creating specific measurable goals is the most appropriate first step to take, because when you know what you want out of your business or how you want your business to perform, you're going to be in a much better position to then determine how communications can be supportive of your business reaching that end state or long-term goal that you do have set. So certainly creating those specific, measurable, and also actionable, realistic, and timed goals is an excellent place to start. So next question here is, assuming that you have your goals down pat, what's the next most important consideration from a marketing communications perspective? Are you choosing social media platforms, pitching a story idea to local media, preparing a communications plan, or talking with an ad sales rep? All right. Well, thank you for participating. And I agree with the majority of you that preparing a communications plan is the best next step, because in that communications plan, you can clearly outline how communications will be supportive of that overall business goal or set of goals that you have set. And the other options that you see here, choosing social media platforms, pitching a story idea to local media, and talking with an ad sales rep, could very well be part of your communications planning process. But it's the plan itself that provides a nice overall view of how communications will be supportive of where you want your business to go. So these first two questions that we shared with you are really setting the scene for what we call the strategic communications planning process. So it begins with setting goals, knowing what you want to achieve, and being really clear about that. The second phase of this process is to then think about how communications can plug in. So choosing supportive communication strategies or concepts that will help you to achieve that goal that you have set. The third phase of this process is termed tactics. So these are the specific action items or tasks, deliverables, or outputs that you are going to produce. So these are tangible. They enable us to be creative. So examples would be videos, infographics, new social media platforms and accounts, maybe paid ads in magazines or newspapers. All of those are examples of tactics. And in working with small businesses and even larger organizations, I see that tactics have a very strong pull, to where before we oftentimes set goals and communication strategies, we get really excited about tactics and start kind of spouting out different tactics that we want to pursue. And it's understandable, because these are the things that you can touch and feel and actually do, but you run the risk of perhaps not aligning well with where you want your business to go if you invest in tactics before you have really strategically thought through what you want to achieve in your business and how communications can play a role. So think about this process as moving from left to right, and I think that you'll see better results for your business. So let's walk through, the topic of today's presentation is mind your messages. So messaging is an important part of what it is you do through communications. And so if we think through this process that I just presented to you, the messaging phase comes last. At this phase, you're thinking about what it is that you're exactly going to say in the tactics that you're creating. So those messages should very clearly resonate with your audience, and they should also connect back to the goals that you have set for your business. And in the chat, I believe Whitney just dropped a nice link to a resource that you can use to help you design your own communications plan. And it includes the phases that you see up here to make sure that you have goals, strategies, and tactics set before we get to this key message setting. So these key messages are the pieces of content that you're going to consistently share through the tactics that you are generating, and they take form as short sentences. Maybe you have 5 to 8 of them for your business, but they're really encapsulating what you want your target audience to know about your business. So this example here shows how these 4 phases are all interconnected. And so let's walk through it so you get a better sense of how each phase builds upon the others. We start out by goal setting. And so in this case, we're looking for a SMART goal that's specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timed. And in this case, we're setting just one goal for illustrative purposes, but you may very well need 2, 3, or 4 goals to really move your business where you want to see it into the future. So know that this can be expanded depending upon the size of your business and the growth objectives that you have. So in this goal, we're saying that we want to increase farm visits by 25% this year in 2023 among a very specific audience segment, which we have termed young farm-rooted urban families. So these are young families with parents that grew up on a farm and are removed from that farm life now, but want their kids to have some farm experiences. So that's a target audience that we have selected as wanting to be very intentional about pursuing. The next phase here is thinking about strategies. So how can communications help us to increase farm visits is the question that we need to ask here. And two possibilities would be that we could retarget individuals who have previously followed our business. And another option might be that we can implement an awareness building campaign. So through retargeting, we're reaching people who maybe have followed us on Facebook or have provided us with their contact information. And we want to message back and forth with them so they have an understanding of what's the latest on the farm and where they can take part in activities and experiences and engage with products that we've created. Awareness building is different in that we're reaching individuals who don't have previous knowledge about your business, but they might fit in that target audience definition and be good customers into the future. So tactics here, these are the tangible outputs or deliverables that we create. If we're interested in retargeting, we might consider running paid Facebook ads to reach people who already follow our page, but maybe are not reliably seeing the messages that we share because of how Facebook's algorithm works. So you can run a retargeting campaign. And another option would be to send an e-newsletter to communicate with folks who have provided email addresses to you because they've bought something online or signed up for an email list, and they've also consented or opted into receiving communications from you. In both cases, that would be supportive, or these tactics would be supportive of this retargeting goal that we have to increase the number of farm visits. So then we move into this key messages phase where we're trying to identify messages that support our goal and that mean something or that resonate with our audience. So one option would be that we provide multi-season fun for the whole family. Key term here, multi-season. We're trying to build understanding that we're not just a farm where you would come once a year for an activity, but we have offerings throughout the year. And so, in other words, increase your number of farm visits by visiting us spring, summer, and fall, or maybe multiple times during the summer if we have different activities. Another possible key message for this particular audience might be that we're a trusted source for locally grown farm products you crave. In this farm-rooted urban family, the parents grew up on farms, so they may have had access to farm-grown produce. And if you're moving away from the farm or you're away from the farm for some time, you may not have access to those types of products anymore. So you're looking for a local source of those products. And if your agritourism operation can provide those products throughout a season, that may mean that the families are interested in coming and visiting your farm multiple times as you rotate your inventory based on what's available locally. So Mallory, I'll pass it to you for our next audience participation question.
Thanks, Alice. And we want to take a minute and reflect on those key messages you just shared. Like, we developed those with one audience target in mind, but hopefully as you're listening to us, you can see that some of those same messages would resonate for different target customer audiences as well. So while we're showing you something that seems very linear and there's all these processes, I hope you recognize there's some flexibility to this too. But it's helpful to be thoughtful and then see which messages maybe align across multiple target audiences and invest more in getting those messages out. So thank you to those who are already responding. We'd like to hear, now that you've just kind of seen what a strategic communication plan looks like, let us know. Do you have something like this already for your business? Do you have something but it's kind of more living in your mind? Or do you simply not have any kind of marketing plan at all? Okay, so most of you do not have a plan. And this is actually very consistent with information we collected from the attendees at the Missouri Farm Bureau Agritourism Conference, where 76% of audience members didn't have a marketing budget for their business either. We understand that this can feel intimidating, and you may be less likely to invest if you're not sure about the return to any of these efforts. That's very natural. We just want to encourage you to use these concepts and remember that MAFFIC is here as a resource. We're happy to sit down with you and help you kind of plan some of this stuff out. But let's go ahead and return to this idea of key messages. So when you're developing key messages, we want you to really think about your audience and what you know about them. You need to think about their needs, their values, their pain points, so that you can write messages that speak directly to them. We're going to suggest you use 4 questions that kind of help you. The first is, how can I express that I create wins for my customers? What problems am I helping my customers solve when they interact with my business? What jobs or tasks can I help them accomplish? And what do they really want or value from the farm experience from visiting me rather than some other business? On the right, you're going to see that we're revisiting 5 different value propositions for agritourism businesses. You may be trying to do all 5, but we encourage you to focus some of your initial marketing efforts on 1 or 2 value propositions that are most strongly related to your revenue streams. Then you're going to cross-check those messages with your overall business goals, and everything should feel very complementary at this point. So in the case of driving visits to the farm, again, as Alice said, you want to tell people, why do I want to come? And more importantly, why and when do I want to come back? Now we want to transition to a bit of providing you with some tips as you're crafting these messages. And the first is, we understand resource constraints are real, and we want you to acknowledge that. So we have limited funds available. When you're thinking about launching a marketing plan, think about spending around 7 to 9% of your sales revenue as a potential ballpark. You may feel comfortable with starting with less than that, but that's kind of a suggestion. Besides just funding, think about the time, the time of your employees. And this is time to do the research, to create the plan, to prepare and share the content, and importantly, to track whether that plan is working. Are you actually seeing an uptick in visitors, in sales, in repeat customers? Do you have the ability to monitor the goals that you have set? Then expertise. If you're considering a plan, but also weigh the expertise of yourself and your team, factor in the cost of training, or possibly the need to hire external consultants to do part of this plan, or pivot if you don't have the resources to pay for the expertise that you think you need. Then you need to ask yourself, where are my targeted customers? Online, this is social media, but there's other options too. You could be thinking about doing paid advertising placements on social media, like Alice mentioned earlier. These can be very economical to start with, depending on how you set your targets. And it is a little bit easier to kind of monitor how much engagement you get when you do those kinds of ads. But also think about influencer engagement, particularly if you already have people who are coming to your farm and posting pictures and we have big media accounts. That may be a low lift. You can pay for search ads in any kind of web browser, or you can pay for banner ads or embedded ads into particular websites where you think your target audience is more likely to be. When you think about offline and reaching customers, this is traditional media, newspapers, magazines, radio, developing local media relations and kind of understanding what your options are. But most importantly, with a little bit of thought, you can do a better job of allocating resources to your best channels.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mallory. So to pick up on some additional tips to consider as you're developing messages, here's one to keep in the back of your mind, and that's how to be creative and relevant. And when you think about relevance, really try to think about what would make a particular message or piece of content newsy, because we as humans are kind of drawn to information that we feel like is news, and we will more likely pay attention to that content relative to messages that we don't feel are as newsy. So there are about 9 or 10 news values that you can embed into messages, but I want to highlight 3 for you today and give some examples. So you can think about whether you can tap into any of these for messages that you're creating. The first is novelty or exclusivity. So if you have a piece of information or a viewpoint that is different from what other businesses may provide, or if you have an experience or a product or an attraction that is exclusive to your business relative to what local competitors offer, find ways to message about that information or that product or service that you offer, because the differentiation that you provide there in your message will more than likely capture the interest of your target audience. Timeliness is another factor. So this is referring to, does a piece of information or a message feel relevant to me at a particular point in time? So if we're reaching those young farm-rooted urban families, an example of a theme that you might want to embed in messages would be back to school. Maybe you have some events that are related to back to school, or you sell products that could be used for back to school. If you want to share those back to school messages, they're more timely in early August, this period that we just went through, relative to early June, for example. So try to time your messages when they feel relevant to your target audience. Proximity is another factor, and it refers to, does a particular message feel relevant to where I am in the moment? And related to proximity, I always try to encourage folks to localize messages as much as possible. And to give you an example, a lot of you are probably aware of national celebration days or months like National Taco Day or National Eat Outside Day, National Dairy Month. You could speak broadly about those types of months and celebrate them. I see that all over social media, for example. But to make that message even more effective, think about how you can localize it. So if you want to do a series of posts about National Dairy Month and you have a local dairy supplier who offers products on your farm, feature that supplier and feature those local products. That will feel like you're speaking more to local issues or local topics that are relevant to your target audience. And then also related to relevance, thinking about ways that you can add value through the messages that you share. So when I say adding value, I mean things like educating, informing, entertaining. Don't just focus on sales alone. And a good rule of thumb is to consider that about 80% of your content should focus on adding value, and about 20% should focus more on sales. The next tip here with respect to making messages effective would be to identify a set of branding elements that you want to view as mandatory in your communications. And when I say branding elements, I mean factors like font choice, the colors that you use, the design that you use, writing style, writing tone. When you use those branding elements consistently, that is what actually contributes to you developing a nice brand presence that is recognizable. So let's walk through an example here so you can see the power of branding mandatories. Here on the screen, we see a logo. So we're taking what that logo looks like. And then if you wouldn't mind, refer back to your Mentimeter screen. And if you've just joined us, you can go to Mentimeter at menti.com and use this 8-digit code that you see up here at the top of the screen to participate in these questions that we're making available today. So this logo on the left, what brand do you think that logo represents? All right, give you a few more moments. All right, well, our responses here show a little bit of confusion, which I would agree with, because we see Facebook if we read what that term says, but because of the color choice that is used and because of the font that's used, we may think that it is a different brand, Google, because Google has consistently applied this color scheme and has consistently used this typeface or font in the communications that it distributes. And so when we see these branding mandatories used, it's almost like we know who's doing the talking or sharing the message before we have consumed the message by reading it or listening to it. So the takeaway here is to choose a set of branding mandatories for your business and then use those consistently in all of your messaging. Developing easy to consume content should be another priority because we as consumers are inundated with information. And so your message really needs to cut through all of that clutter. And there are a few techniques that you can use to do that. Some examples would be to keep your content short. So use short sentences, use short paragraphs. If you talk with any of your target audience members, I'm assuming that a large share of them are going to say, don't serve me up large blocks of text. No one really enjoys large blocks of text. They're difficult to read through. And in fact, they may not be reading through them at all, but skipping them entirely. So if you can break up information by making lists, adding text formatting to subheads, or highlighting key points in italicized text or boldface text, those are good practices to help make your content easier to read and consume. Also, don't neglect visuals. They can be very effective at breaking up information. The example up here on the screen comes from a farm in Indiana, and we pulled this as an example for the admission schedule that they've published for the fall. You could pack all of this information into a long paragraph, but what this farm's elected to do is to add some graphic elements and illustrate it, which is likely to capture the attention of a target audience more so than text would alone. All right, so the last tip that we have for you today is to organize your content and your messages in what we like to call a content calendar. So there's an example of one of these calendars up here on the screen, and here in a bit, Whitney will add a link to where you can go and download a template for one of these calendars that you can use yourself. And this is a really basic template, but for each communication channel, I encourage you to keep one of these content calendars active. And here you would drop the date that you want a piece of content to go online. You would include the message you want to share, what media or supporting visuals you want to add, and then any notes that you feel like you want to remember about that piece of content, to-dos and those types of things. Then after you've developed messages, really think through whether a particular message does correspond with a goal that you set and included in your plan. And if it doesn't, then evaluate whether you really want to move forward with sharing that message, or instead choose a different message that does better align with where you want your business to go and the goals that you have set. So we'll share the recording from today's presentation so you can take a closer look at this example that we have here. But I do want to call your attention to a couple of factors. Here is an example of how we built out that goal column. And in this case, our sample plan was pretty simple. We only had increasing farm visits as one component. But I did try to distinguish what would be an example of a value add post versus a post that's focused more on driving farm visits and ultimately driving sales. So this is about a 50-50 distribution in terms of sales-oriented content and value-added oriented content. Not quite that 80-20 distribution that I mentioned earlier. So we have some work to do here. But also in the message column, these are fully prepared messages that you could very easily, in this case, copy and paste and move into a Facebook post scheduler. If you find that you have post ideas, but you don't have the time to write out that post or fully prepare it when that idea comes to mind, use your content calendar as a place where you can drop those ideas and then refer to them later when you do feel creative and you have the time to prepare a full post or a full message. So use the content calendar for brainstorming and dropping ideas in there, and then also as a repository for all the content that's ready to go in whatever communication channels you choose to use. So Mallory, I'll pass it to you for our last audience participation question.
Thanks, Alice. So you've heard a lot today, but we'd like you to take a minute and put this into practice. Let us know which of the following key messages down below best reflect on this goal. In 2023, we want to generate 50% more on-farm packaged food product sales, sorry for that D, by introducing longtime customer top picks. Okay, we see those answers coming in. And so far, everyone is correct. If you're trying to message about longtime customer top picks and you're trying to really move food products sales, you want a message that speaks to that. And here we're picking up on these themes of local food traditions and culture. But I also want to remind everyone, you have many different ways to add value to your business and revenue streams to pursue. You may not be ready for on-farm packaged food product sales, right? You may not have a commercial kitchen. You may not be able to partner with other farms to bring products on site. Don't feel like you have to push your business into certain goals until you're really ready. So be thoughtful about what your business goals are as you're developing these messaging strategies. And we do have one last question for you. As a result of what we've shared today, and we'll send out an email with the links from the chat as well, how prepared do you feel to develop key messages that drive business results? And we thank everyone for joining us here today. You're welcome to put any questions you might have in the chat. I realize we are at time, but we will stay on here and answer questions that you might have. Okay, well, I do hope you take the time to sit down and start drafting some messages, no, we're not gonna start with messages. We're not gonna start with tactics. We're gonna start with our goals for our business. We can only advance so many pieces of our business at one time. If you've never set a business goal before, just try to identify one goal. Again, we encourage you to make it something that you can actually measure so that you can follow up on how you're doing as you try to reach that particular business goal. Any questions from our participants today? And if you just need time to sit and think on this, feel free to reach out to us afterwards as well.
Yes, we in MAFFIC, like Mallory mentioned earlier, have marketing services available to offer, so we'd be happy to visit with you one-on-one.
Thanks for that comment. Okay, everyone. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Yes, happy Wednesday.